Welcome to the Sensible Center podcast, where two middle-aged guys drunkenly talk politics and political reform. Grab an adult beverage and enjoy the show. Further information can be found at sensiblecenterpack.com. You can reach us at sensiblecenterpack@gmail.com or follow us on X at USASCPack. Hey, Bob, how you doing?
What's up, Kevin? Happy Wednesday, early September to you.
Happy post-Labor Day.
Yes, sir.
Did you have
Season's changing.
Did you have a good Labor Day weekend? Did you do the traditional this year? Did you read the Communist Manifesto to the kids like you usually do?
They wanted to hear the Grinch Stole Christmas, and I figured it was about the same thing, so we went that route this year.
Or did you do the some cosplay of the Haymarket Square riot of the late 1800s?
The last time I tried to play cosplay, I got in trouble for running around naked. So we're not going to do that anymore.
That's not the kind of cosplay I'm talking about, Bob.
Well, that's the only kind of cosplay I guess I knew.
That's how we used to celebrate Labor Day as kids. I don't know. Everyone has their different traditions. Some do a barbecue. Some relive labor riots of years past.
Hey, and some people go into labor.
Yeah, we might have some labor. There's a lot of labor issues going on right now. We might have. And just to let you know, there's not going to be an episode of Biden Family Ties simply due to the writers' strike. Our writers are off.
We don't want any scabs in this podcast, do we?
No. It's a union shop, strictly union. So I'm glad you had a great Labor Day weekend. Welcome to everyone for episode, I believe, 6 of the Sensible Center podcast.
We're seasoned now, huh?
Yeah, we've got. Oh, just by the way, I still haven't heard from Bernie Sanders, but I did reach out to Vivek Ramaswamy via his LinkedIn profile. That was the only way I could reach him. His website gave no other option, so I'm going to be checking LinkedIn, and also reached out to RFK, and I did get a canned response saying that they will respond to us. So. Nice. We'll see if, I sent out the general inquiry, saying, come on our podcast, we're safe. And so we'll see if we get any of those people on. Otherwise, we're going to have to go with the lesser tier for people we actually know. We might have to start with
state politicians. Yeah.
or friends and relatives. Work our way up from there. But we will be having guests soon. We promise.
We may be visiting one of the tent cities.
Yep. Well, we have a somewhat packed agenda tonight, and so let's just jump into it. I think we're going to cover the issue of age in politics. Just recently, Mitch I was going to call him Mitch McDonald, but
McConnell.
Mitch McConnell had another freezing experience during a press conference where he, and I'm starting to feel sorry for the guy, which takes a lot to make me feel sorry for Mitch. But when he's out there and did you see the clip? What I liked about the clip is that his press person stepped up later and said, can you speak up when you ask the questions, as if that was the problem.
Yeah. I saw the first clip. The second clip I actively avoided because it's the type of thing that I personally don't like to see.
Right.
I can't watch medical stuff. I can't watch surgery shows on TV, and I can't watch things like that because I start to internalize it, and then it's going to happen to me. Or at least I'm afraid of it. That's how I think. So
that's a little bit superstitious there, Bob.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it superstitious. I would call it more crazy, I think.
All right. All right. We'll call it
Or
crazy
I
then.
can feel their pain, sort of thing. I don't know,
That's what I
but
said. I feel
yeah.
bad for him.
Hmm.
No, nobody should be put in that position, right? And where they're having a medical event in front of cameras and millions of people.
Yeah, it's not good. And I mean, the same thing you could talk about Dianne Feinstein and her. Kind of she's had public problems on and on the floor and off the floor. And aid whispering, just say yeah or yay, that sort of thing. I mean, yeah, um, it's sad, and I don't know where this conversation is exactly going to go, but the median age of the U.S. population is 38.8. I couldn't find an average age of the U.S. population. Um, the average U.S. House member is 58, and Senate senator is 64.
So
In
you're saying
short,
they skew older
yeah,
than
88% of the House is older than the U.S. median age.
that's because they're wise. They're wise old men and women.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think there's wisdom does come with age, and I think that both the Senate and the House should skew older than average America, but not by that level. Especially considering that we've got a couple up near 90, Chuck Grassley and Feinstein, right?
Well, I would
Um,
say, I work for a large corporation and you work for a large corporation. How many people working there are over 80 or over 90?
yeah, our
I don't think that
company,
happens.
it, once you hit a certain level, and I believe it's director, but I'm not 100% sure. Definitely above a director. Once you hit 65, you have to retire.
Right, and there's reasons for that. I mean,
Yep. That said,
like,
if you're a little lower than that, I mean, I know there's been employees around there in their 80s and 90s before, right? But yes, when you get
hey,
to a leadership role, they cut you off.
I'm in my mid 50s and I'm already seeing declining faculties and things like that. So I can't imagine what it's going to be 30 years from now.
I I'm sure there'll be medical advancements by then. You'll be 18 again or 21 anyway.
Oh, Bob, we could only wish. So actually, I did some research too on the house. So I think the issue is mostly with the what they call the silent generation. Even though I think the boomers are 66% of the Senate. I saw, and the boomers are still the largest generation in both the House and Senate. Although my Gen X is getting up there, but there are 35 representatives older than 80, and eight, almost 10% of the Senate is over 80. Um, so I mean, I guess as we talk about this, I don't think we said there's clearly some benefits as far as wisdom, but just imagine your grandfather or even great grandfather, leading the free world or having a significant position of power in our government, and I don't think we're saying that you necessarily start cutting them off when they get up to pee more than once a night, or when they fart when they start walking. I don't think
That's
that's necessarily the cutoff because quite frankly,
been doing that for years.
yeah, you know exactly. But the question is there a reasonable limit? And I don't know if you did any research about what the founders thought, and oh, we could play a little game. Guess how old Washington was when he was inaugurated? Ding, 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 ding.
55,
57. Very good. Jefferson. Well, Adams came next, but we'll go Jefferson.
50,
57. Both 57. Adams,
62.
61. And Adams and Jefferson lived to be 83 and 90. George didn't live much longer. He only had a couple more years after he retired. But I think people, get fooled by those white wigs that they used to wear. They weren't that old. It was the wigs made them look old, right,
Yeah.
Bob?
Well, you'd have to be relatively young to initiate a revolution, right? It's not an old people game. And I
Right.
mean, you kind of brought it up, grandfather or grandfather. Could you imagine them leading the country? And I couldn't, not necessarily because I don't think they're capable, but they wouldn't want to at that age, right? And so you got to think about what is the motivation for these people to spend all of their golden years when they're already rich
Yeah.
working.
Don't they care about the grandkids? Don't they want to see the grandkids go on? Well,
My thought is they're probably not working that hard, and they're addicted to the power and the money and the free stuff, you know. So yeah, there's one answer, right? I mean, term limits.
yeah. I mean,
And
term limits would definitely uh, solve a good deal of it, I guess, because even if you had somebody, I don't think people decide to run when they're in their 70s, probably, right? They probably started running when they were in their 50s and 60s. Like you said, you know, you're not going to start doing it when you're, in your 70s or your grandfather or great grandfather. So it's more that they've sort of hung on for longer periods of time. But, you know, then you get into, like you said, how hard are they working? I mean, clearly they all have staffs uh, to take care of things. Um, I think I don't think Biden's. I mean, it'd be interesting as people write books about his administration later to see how actively he is involved in the day to day management, or is he taking numerous naps during the day and riding his bicycles and picking himself up off the floor and things like that.
I think he's taking one long continuous nap, and he's got like those Homer Simpson glasses on where it looks like his eyes are open, but they're not.
Well, he wears the
Somebody wheels
aviators,
him in.
so
Yeah,
you can't really tell with the aviators. He probably just sitting at his desk.
when he gets
People are talking to him.
half a word out, and the other half of the word is just it's because he's actually snoring and dreaming. He's just like, that's
They're
funny.
like, they're like, did he just nod? No, he's drooling. Uh, uh, so yeah, I mean term limits. But here we get back into the issue of, and I did a little reading, and there are lower limits for all the there are minimum age requirements. 25 to be a representative, 30 to be a senator, and these haven't changed over time, right?
Yeah.
These are written in the
35 to be president.
35 to be president. Now we could also say, are those too high or too low, right? I would say if we're going to change these things, if we're going to do a constitutional amendment, why shouldn't we also lower those levels to? I mean, to me, I always say if you're old enough to fight for the country, you should be old enough to lead it too.
I agree.
Um,
18.
18, I would say 18. I mean, if somebody wants to vote for somebody who's 20 years old or 19 years old, they should be able to vote for them. I mean, in our society, they're an adult. Um, and like I said, they could be drafted into the military. So they should be also be able to be a congressperson or whatnot. So, but you always get back to the issue, and I think that's where the founders of the country ended up. That said, well, the electorate ultimately could decide all these things, right? They could
Yeah.
decide whether that person's competent. So why do we need to set an upper age limit on people? See what I'm
And
saying?
I don't think I care to set an upper age limit. on people. I think I care to set term limits in government, right? So the way that works is if you are a rep for 2 terms, right? That's it. You can't be a senator, can't be president. Maybe it's not 2 terms. Maybe it's a total of 4 terms in any office, right? I don't exactly know what that is, but it's not just not just in one house, right? Not just in the House, not just in the Senate, not just in the presidency, and really, honestly, beyond that, too, Department of Justice and everything else. I feel the same way, but especially from an elected standpoint, set term limits, total term limits in government, and that's it. You can't jump from the House to the Senate to the presidency.
So why do you think the people are voting for these people over and over again?
Name recognition is one. It's a big one. Um, Pork, that's another one.
Well,
I
yeah, I
think
think
we've discussed the money in the past, right? With
yeah,
the way that companies and unions can now, and really have been for a while, but endlessly donate. I think we're going to get into a pack conversation
yeah.
later,
Hmm.
right? All these large sums of money, it helps to have that name recognition.
Yeah, I think also the seniority system in Congress, such that the longer you're there, the the more leadership roles, the more committee assignments you get, and all that helps when you're negotiating things for your constituents, right?
It does.
So Mitch McConnell's very powerful. I'm sure he does very well for the people of Kentucky, where somebody new and probably less experienced isn't going to have that power base and probably isn't going to be able to, like you said, pork and things that the constituents actually want. So it's kind of a catch 22. We keep on voting. Not that I'm saying that that's right either, because, like you said, it's sort of an ingrained system, and they don't want to give up the power because as they're there longer, they increase their power base and their seniority and get all these committee assignments and whatnot. So, I,
You
I
could get into stock trading as well, right? I mean, they're getting rich not off their $174,000 salary. They're getting rich off of knowing what laws are going to be created and then trading stocks based upon that. Um, and so the question there is too, if you take away that benefit of being able to get rich off of stocks, they lose a lot of the incentive to stay and stick around. That said, you know, it's a difficult thing to say. You're gonna just because somebody wants to represent the country or their state within the country, you should restrict their ability to invest.
right. But here again, Joe Biden still can run for a second term under your term limit theory, right?
Well, it
He's
depends. I mean,
qualified. He's
he
going
had
to
a lot of
be
terms
in the Senate, right?
in the Senate. Yeah,
So you would say if we had term limits in the Senate, he would likely have been out of politics by now, and wouldn't, have ended up being vice president and then president.
right.
But you don't have a problem with an 80-year-old running for a first term for
No,
president.
not at
Okay.
all.
What about if we just take the average life expectancy and then minus the term that they're going to serve? So if the average life expectancy is 80 and you have a 4-year term, you have to be at least, you have to be, like I said, formula driven, at least 76 to run, because we would expect you to die during your term, because that's
Yeah.
the average life expectancy. Can we put in an actuarial table into our
I don't know though,
calculation?
because then you get into women have longer life expectancies than men, right? So,
Oh, then we'd have a matriarchy instead of a patriarchy.
right, and it's not the matriarchy I'm scared of. It's the fact that you're
Sounds like
now
it.
discriminating against somebody because they were born male.
Yeah, that's right.
Then you can get into race. I'm sure you could probably break down race and life expectancy as well, right?
Yeah.
How far do you go on that?
All right. Well, I think we both come out in the same area here. I would like to see some type of age thing, but I think term limits could. I'm willing to try term limits to see if it. I'm guessing it's going to help drive a younger, more representative of the general population, which I think is always going to be a good thing because you're going to have the experience, the background of the people where you're generally representing, right? Because you get out of touch, you know. I don't know. I don't know who's the latest hot band or whatnot, and I'm sure Diane Feinstein doesn't know either. So I think you
And
lose
I mean,
touch as you kind of get older.
there's such few opportunities to meet your representatives and senators, and when they're here, unless you're really in tune, you don't even know that they're having a town hall.
Right.
And if they are, the chances that you're going to get to speak to them for more than a minute or two, or even at all, like face to face, rather than they're on stage to really let you know their concerns, it's not likely unless you've got a whole boatload of cash behind you. And
Yep.
that's my concern. I think they spend so much time fundraising at this point and speaking to those that are wealthy that the little guy gets lost.
Yep. And somebody new and fresher face is going to have to go out there and build his base. So the likelihood that you're going to have that interaction with them is going to be greater. So let's just take a complete 180 and talk about and this is sort of political because I think it's driving a lot of the conversation, or at least some of the conversation among political candidates and in politics in general, is sort of the we talked a little bit about it, but I'd like to get in more in depth about cancel culture and free speech. I don't know if
What are
you
you
saw.
drinking?
Oh, that's a good question. I've been drinking. I'm enjoying it a lot. Then I forgot what I was drinking. I am drinking cognac. Yeah, I'm going classy tonight. I'm drinking cognac from the south of France. It's called Parc Cognac VSOP, and let me tell you, it is tasty. I can. It's an artesian blend. Shows light fruits with flambéed banana. I knew it was flambéed banana as soon as I tasted it, and fresh vine peaches. It's quite delightful. Crisp and clear flavors. Um,
That sounds
so
good.
yeah, and I know who actually gave this to me. Um, so I thank her for bringing it to one of our parties. I'm almost done with it though. I'm gonna miss it when it's gone because I'm likely not to buy it again because it's more expensive than I would usually pay for
Just
for.
just invite your friend over again. Let her know you're almost out. Let it slip. And you already did, as a matter of fact. Make sure she listens to our podcast.
That's right. This is a coded message. Come up to Wisconsin and bring a case of Park Cognac. What do you
Which will
What do
not
you
be
drink?
considered a pack donation, by the way.
No, it
Um,
will not.
I I am drinking an Elijah Craig toasted barrel.
Oh, nice.
It's 94 proof. Nothing terribly special about it, but it's a good bottle. Nice and oaky. A little
Sticking with the
buttery.
bourbon.
Sticking with the bourbon.
All right. So,
Hopefully we can get together and have a drink. I'm hoping to maybe be in the Chicagoland area a few times over the next few months.
all right. We will definitely get together and drink, and maybe record an in-person podcast.
Oh, that'd be great.
That'd be fun, huh?
I think it would.
By the way, listeners, I am planning on going to a democracy convention in a couple weeks. So the purpose of the convention is to get all the organizations that are supporting different reform movements within our political system, and it's out in LA, so it will be a good time to get them all together, discuss what's working, kind of update. So there's a lot of things going on. I hope to bring some information back with me that we can kind of highlight some of these groups in future podcasts. And I got business cards this week too, Bob. I'll send you a picture of them. They're quite impressive. They actually look sort of official with our Sensible Center Pack logo.
Well, that's
So
awesome.
yeah, I'll pass some of those around there, and we'll build our base from there. So, anyways, I wanted to talk about cancel culture and free speech. I don't know. One of my conservative buddies sent me a thing this morning um, in regards to did you see the Oberlin College? I guess it was a lacrosse coach spoke out about, and we both listened to Riley Gaines on Mar, and I think it was the swimmer Leah Thomas, I believe, um, that this coach was commenting on. Did you hear anything about that? It was in the New York Post and Fox News.
Refresh my memory because I may have, but
Yeah,
if I did, I lost it.
it just recently happened. She tweeted something about that, that biological men should not be competing against females, in sports. She's a lacrosse coach for Oberlin College, which I guess is a small liberal arts school, and um, the New York Post basically said, well, she actually said that she was burned at the stake. That's the quote from her for her views on transgender athletes. So, you know, she was she met with administrators and they kind of said your views aren't consistent with the views of the school. They didn't fire her. I would say they probably reprimanded her and let it be known that they weren't happy that she was expressing those views. Um, but this gets in the idea of cancel culture, right? She was expressing her opinion about something, and I mean, and that's a very complicated issue. Also, um, I don't think there's any easy answers to it. I think, you know, I think there's a common sense approach to it, but I think there's a lot of gray areas. I don't know if you want to express where you fall out on that in general. My opinion is I think biological males shouldn't be competing against females. I don't think it. I think they, you know, I'm fine with whatever they do, but I think they should compete against. I don't think there should be unfair competition in any way, shape, or form. So I have no problem with them competing, but it should be all fair and equal competition. Um,
Yeah. So,
I mean,
I mean,
I think that's a common sense view. And I kind of think that's what this woman was, expressing. This coach was expressing. I didn't, but clearly there's this idea that you can't talk about that type of thing.
well, it really depends, right? I mean, the statement that your views don't align with the school's, fine. That's fine. It's the school's right to have a different view, and it's the coach's right to have a different view, and that's fine. The person didn't lose their job. I think that's great. That's how it should go in society. Your views outside of school don't shouldn't necessarily affect your job. And that said, if the school tells you you need to play certain players or let certain players compete, and you don't agree with that, you can quit. The school has the right to get rid of you at the same time. You're not following the lead of the business.
Yep.
And it's uh, pretty pretty simple, pretty fair. As far as my views go, I think your views and my views align. I think Title IX is in place for a reason. I think if we start allowing biological males to compete against women, it undoes Title IX to the point where why not just mix everybody back together again into one sport? Um, we had a recent NBA player, and I'm sorry it escapes me, that basically made the comment, well, what happens if I just go throw a wig on and decide, oh, he's retired now. If I decide I'm going to go play in the NBA, what are they going to do?
Right.
Right? And you start seeing things like that happen, and all of a sudden the WNBA becomes, instead of a league of women, but a league of retired NBA players who just want to make a little extra money, and potentially would generate a whole lot more money for the league, if for nothing else, the spectacle. A bunch of retired men in wigs. Um, you get to a point. What's the point anymore, right? So,
Well, that's the slippery slope thing. I don't know. I mean, personally, I don't know how big an issue this thing is. It seems like one political party wants to make it a big cultural wedge issue, and I understand why, because some views are kind of extreme on it, and they probably understand the country might not be with those extreme views. But how often is this occurring? And you just kind of indicated a case where what if they were throwing on wigs? I mean, I just generally my bigger thing is I don't think cancel culture is a thing. You just said, well, a corporation, and I agree, or a school, if you're an employee, you have certain responsibilities as a representative of that employer, right? That is not necessarily, to me, an issue of free speech. Like you
you can
said,
go work for someone else.
right. Privately, you could still say whatever you want, right? Nobody's throwing you in jail. To me, it is the employer's right, be it a college or whatever, to say, hey, if I worked for a bank and I went out and said, I thought, the whole financial industry was a Ponzi scheme, I would imagine my employer would have something to say to me, right?
Hmm.
So I could say it. Nobody's throwing me in jail. But is that cancel culture, or is that just, uh, an employer with an economic interest protecting their own interests, right? I mean, what do you think? Um, even if they fired me, like you said, in this case, I think the college took a reasonable approach. Although, if you look at New York Post and Fox News, they're making a huge issue about this. And like I said, somebody sent me this morning saying, "Here's the left again, going crazy." Um, but to me, I think them sitting down and reprimanding or saying, your views aren't aligned with the school's views on this. Can you kind of tone it down a bit or whatnot? I think is sort of a reasonable approach rather than coming out and firing her or whatnot. So I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I think that the school handled it well. I do. I also think, though, if I was a parent or a coach in that position, I probably would have done what that coach did, which is say, hang on a second, this is potentially going to be to the detriment of somebody else that would make this team or that would be competing in a competition, and I don't like it. Like you said, it's a slippery slope. And you also said one side of the aisle wants to make this a big deal, and it's obviously they do for political reasons, but I think the other side of the aisle wants to make the same argument. Maybe not the whole other side of the aisle, but there's portions of the other side of the aisle that are very loud, very outspoken, and want to have the same conversation
But
so they
I
can finger point.
but I think they're sensible. You know, I do think there's a center of this country that as as we talk about in this podcast, and as we reach these conclusions, I think they're losing. Both sides are losing the center here, right?
Yeah, I agree.
And
In the
and
end,
Bill Maher
yeah,
talks about this a lot too. And I listened to a little bit of his conversation with Rogan, and they got into the, Bill's big on the left, being extreme and being politically correct, and you can't say anything. But then again, isn't pushing back on things that you don't like also free speech? I mean, isn't that also free? If somebody says something I don't like, right? If they say something what I consider not politically correct or insensitive, and I say, "Hey," and I call them out on it, isn't that also speech?
it
They they
is.
they
Saying
they
nothing is speech at that
they
point.
they talk about it, and even in this article, somebody commented it's a Maoist, tribunal or whatever. I'm like, oh come on, take a deep breath, people. That's not, you know, pushing back
I,
on
I
things.
don't. Yeah, I don't think
Is
Mao would have had any of it. Mao would have just off with
right.
your head.
We're not. I don't think we're locking people up, and we could get into deplatforming and all of that stuff too, and I have thoughts on that, but just
We
kind of
made it to episode 6. We're still here.
right. Nobody's canceled us. I mean, nobody's locked us. I mean, see what I'm
Yeah.
saying? I think it's overreaction on all sides, right? Take a deep breath. We're going through, generational change. We're going through a lot of things as a society. We need to give other people space and compassion to work through it, rather than kind of being all this highfalutin rhetoric and
I just it's do what you want, man. I don't care. Be who you want to be. Do what you want. Just don't force it on me. Don't force it on my kids. Don't tell me I have to have, my kids exposed to drag shows and very graphic sexual books at school.
oh, I
I've got
agree.
a problem
I
with that.
agree wholeheartedly. And
Right. And
and
if you're
like I
going to
said,
argue to have those books in school, then you should go up in front of a crowd of kids and read them yourself, and then tell me you still believe that. That's just me. And I'm not pointing the finger at you. I'm pointing the finger at politicians and school board members, and you know. But yeah, you do what you want, say what you want, accept the consequences for it. Simple as that.
right? Yeah, I mean that's kind of the society we live in, and this idea of cancel culture and censorship, and I think it's overblown. I think deplatforming. There's plenty of ways to get out your voice, and today I would say you could get out your voice more, in your opinion, more than ever before. I mean, it used to be newspapers, right? Uh, and so if the local newspaper decided not to print what you had to say, it was difficult to get a following, right? And then it
Yeah.
was network TV and radio, and those were concentrated. Now, you know, you could be, do a stupid ass podcast. Oh, not, and get your opinion out there, and you could have millions of followers. Uh, you know, um, and and if somebody deplatform you, then you form Truth Social. You just keep on moving around, right?
That's right.
I just don't think in today's world that this idea of canceling. I mean, even people have been canceled, like let's say Louis C.K. He kind of just formed his own thing.
He's still out there.
Yeah, he's selling his own performances on his own website. I mean, a lot of comedians are doing that now
So,
wisely. I mean, they're
and yeah.
owning their own stuff. They're not beholden to people or sponsors or whatnot, right? They
So
have their
back to Riley
followers,
Gaines
right?
too, right? Riley Gaines now is making rounds on the political circuit. Like you stated, she was on Mar. She's been on Fox News. She's been on some other newscasts and podcasts and things like that. So even if you fall out of, there's been plenty of people also who've lost jobs because of something they've said. Next thing you know, they've got a new job in the political arena. And sometimes I think some of these stronger opinions are simply that, trying to trying to throw a Hail Mary.
So are we in a sort of agreement? Do Not many people agree with me on.
I completely agree with you. Do what you want to do, say what you want
Right.
to say. Just again, don't force your values on other people, strangers, outside of maybe don't murder. Well, we have laws for a reason, but
Yeah, I mean, to me, there's a pendulum, and it's swinging. Clearly
yeah.
swinging one way, and it'll come back. I mean, but we just have to, let it breathe a little bit, and
Once the entire
it'll settle.
WNBA is retired NBA players in wigs, then yeah, I mean the pendulum will swing back.
Yeah,
Once the entire Olympic swimming circuit is men,
I don't think it'll go that far, but we just need to, settle down, let it breathe. We live in a society where everyone's got to instantly react to everything, right? And got to give some space and some compassion to people as we kind of work these things through. I think that's the best way to put it. So you mentioned that we were going to talk about PACs, and I thought it was a good idea to do that here because maybe some of our listeners and future listeners, oh, are going to are curious about sort of the history of PACs, what a PAC is. We formed a PAC, sensiblecenterpac.com. You can look at our website and get some of the information. We're looking to, you know, solicit donations at some point, have events. We're kind of just starting, kind of feeling our way here. But the idea is to kind of support candidates who are on the political reform. So I thought it would make sense to kind of talk a little bit about PACs, the history of PACs, where it stands now, where our PAC fits into all of it. So you want me to just go with it? Have you done a little research, Bob, or because I did a little research. I knew about it because I set up the PAC, and you got to file
yeah.
forms with the Federal Election Commission and all that good stuff to be official. But I kind of did the research early on as we kind of were doing this together.
Year or two before we decided to form this pack, I was looking at it myself because I wanted to find a way to get more involved in the political arena. So I did actually do some research prior. And then I did a little bit of just basic research leading up to this conversation because I knew we were going to be talking about it a little bit. I didn't go deep at all,
Okay.
but yeah, I'll let you kind of lead and then I'll just fill in.
So the first political action committee was formed as part of the labor movement in 1943. So prior to that, Congress it prohibited unions from giving direct contributions to political candidates. I think that was back in the 20s, and before that, I think 1907 corporations were disallowed. So, GE or I
Yep,
don't know if GE was about, yeah,
you're probably
Edison
around.
elect, yeah,
Yep.
couldn't write a check to Joe Schmo politician. So to kind of quote unquote get around that, these political action committees were formed, and the Congress of Industrial Organizations, the CIO, AFL-CIO, formed the first PAC back in 1943. So a PAC is a tax-exempt organization that pools campaign contributions and donates those funds to campaigns for or against candidates, ballot initiatives, or legislation. So contributions to PACs from corporate or labor union treasuries are illegal, and we'll kind of get into super PACs and things like that later to kind of describe the current state of affairs. But those entities may sponsor a PAC, therefore, kind of setting it up, doing the administration and fundraising. So that leads to two different kinds of PACs. There's the connected PAC, which is either corporate or union trade organization supported PAC, where managers or shareholders of the corporation or members of a union can contribute. So there's roughly 1,600 corporate PACs and probably 1,300 related to trade union and union. So kind of equal there, but those are connected to sort of an organization. And then there's non-connected PACs, which is what we fall into, which are more ideological missions, which I guess is our PAC, which is kind of an ideological mission in regards to political reform and candidates that support political reform and are not usually partisan or extreme. Single issue groups such as abortion rights, things like that, and within that there's also leadership PACs that members of Congress and political leaders can form, that they can sort of get contributions and then support people in their parties. And each of these type of PACs have limits. An individual contribution to our PAC as a non-connected PAC would be $5,000 per year per individual. So I guess we could ask that, if you were going to send in money to us, and we'll end up soliciting donations and things like that. We're not fully set up for that at this point, but you could contribute $5,000 per year, and then we can contribute $5,000 per election to a candidate. We could contribute $15,000 per year to a political party, or $5,000 per year to another PAC that we decide to support. So pretty low dollar limits there. All's well and good, right? You say, hey, that's not really big money.
We're trying to help the small guy, though, right? We're trying to help those that really can be, those that are in line to make change. Those who want term limits. Those who want campaign finance reform. Those that aren't already kind of swept up into the system.
Yeah, and those people will be more responsive because, like you said, they're not already within the moneyed system, right? So any level of contribution is going to help them, right? Because they're not beholden to the interest. Because if they were, they wouldn't be supporting reform, most likely, right?
That's right.
So it kind of makes sense that we could have our biggest influence on those candidates also. So that's what we're looking forward to. So anyways, this all sounds well and good, right? But then along came what we call super PACs. And just like Superman, they have special powers. Do you know where Superman got his special powers from? I was trying to think of that.
Because the planet that he was born on had, most likely anyway, was a lot larger than Earth. So,
oh really?
He was stronger.
Are you just
Think
making
about
that
the forces?
up?
No, I'm not making it up. I mean, I'm not 100% sure. I'm not a huge Superman fan, but the planet he was born on, his race of people had super strength.
They all did?
Remember he was sent off because there was some sort of calamity. I don't know if it was a war or a comet or what it was. He was sent off in a spaceship by his parents, and he was the lone survivor from his planet.
Krypton, right?
Yep.
So, well, then kryptonite came from his planet?
Correct.
And that took away his power somehow?
Hmm.
That's messed up, man. And who's Lex Luthor anyway? Where did he come from?
Yeah, I don't know about Lex Luthor. I'm guessing he also came from either came from that planet, or maybe if the planet was destroyed by war, maybe he's from that other planet. That's possible. Yeah, I'm
We
not
don't
sure
know.
about that one.
We don't know. I always thought that was a cool name, Lex Luthor. It's better than
He came.
Clark
He,
Kent.
he was
Clark Kent
born of the Lutherans.
was he? It was Martin Lex,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
The guy from Two Live Crew, wasn't he a Luthor too?
I think he was. Yeah.
All related. Anyways, that cognac is tasting good. Anyways, so in 2010, you guys have might have people might have heard of Citizens United, right? You know what that is?
Yep. That's
So,
the.
yeah,
That's what I referred to earlier. That the Supreme Court solidified the ability for corporations and unions to donate large amounts of money because it equates to free speech.
right.
In
Citizens
short.
United was producing a documentary back in 2008 against Hillary Clinton, who was running for president in the Democratic Party against Barack Obama in the primary, primarily. And they wanted to air this documentary. So this raised the whole issue in regards to corporations and unlimited spending. And clearly, they were going to be spending more than the limits would allow. So they took it all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled in 2010 that one, corporations and unions are people through sort of what they call associations of people. I guess people exist within unions and corporations, so they decided to transfer First Amendment rights under the Constitution to corporations and unions. Now, do you agree with that decision, Bob? That these sort of legal entities are people and should have rights under the U.S. Constitution?
I don't like all the money in the way it's being used and abused. I can't
Well,
say I necessarily
answer the question, defendant.
disagree. Corporations have a right in a community to speak just like any individual in the community does. We've had this conversation before. Here's the thing though. The communities should be able to vote, donate these individuals within the community. Because you would figure if you have let's say a multinational corporation that provides jobs to the community is going to vote in the best interest of their jobs and that corporation, generally speaking. So giving that corporation the right to donate millions and millions of dollars isn't really necessary. Because the
That's not the
community and
point.
those who work for the corporation, I know exactly what you're saying. I'm not sure I can draw that line to say corporations aren't people
They're
and
not.
unions aren't people.
They're not people. Corporation is a corporation. It's not a person. I can't. I can't have lunch with a corporation. I can't. I can't hug
Corporation
a
can buy you
corporation.
lunch.
I can't
Corporation
hug a
can buy you
corporation.
lunch.
A corporation can't run a marathon. A corporation's not a person.
Yeah, yeah.
Me,
I won't be heartbroken at all if somehow Citizens United got overturned. It's the law of the land. I think it's a bit of a gray area there, and I have a hard time committing either way. I lean the way you do. I don't think corporations are people, and I think there needs to be campaign finance reform. Say the same thing for unions. Unions aren't people either. People within the unions are people.
see, that's where the
Uh,
liberals have a problem. They're like, wait a second. Now unions are people. And I've sat in groups of people in the reform movement. We've had this conversation. And they're like, well, corporations are definitely not people, but unions are people. And I'm like, now you're going to lose people, right? Because you're just doing it because unions
They're on your side.
typically support your side, right?
Yep.
And I sort of I think it's a little grayer on unions,
I think it's 1-to-1.
but I would still say unions are not people. They're a construct of people,
Yeah.
as the
As
Supreme Court.
corporations are.
And here's where I have a problem with. Citizens United was ruled 5-4. It was a very close decision. And my problem is the constructionalists, the Alitos, and now I can't remember the guy who died.
If you wouldn't ask me, I would have been able to tell you. He was friends with. He was good friends with Ginsburg.
Yeah, yeah. Anyways, they're the constructionalists, and yet they read into the Constitution that corporations and unions are people. So, anyways, we'll get off that topic. So that's one tenet, and then as we talked about before, they also ruled that money is speech, and basically they
Scalia.
said, yeah, Scalia. Basically, they said
Scalia.
Scalia. You say Scalia, I say Scalia. Uh, so basically, and I read a little bit more about this since the last time we talked. But basically, they took your argument that spending is essential to disseminating speech. So again, money is not speech, but spending is essential to disseminating speech. I would say no, not necessarily. I would say you could disseminate speech spending quite a little bit amount of money. In fact, it seemed like Donald Trump did a very good job through Twitter disseminating lots of speech, and it was very powerful, right? It's
Absolutely.
not necessary. It's not
It was
necessary
free.
to disseminate speech. Can we
It's
agree,
getting all kinds of free coverage in the media right now.
Right. Can we at least agree to that? Money is not necessary to disseminate speech.
Yeah, I think most external campaign funding should be banned and banished. Everybody gets a certain amount of money depending on what office you're running for, given by the government. Done. If the states want to do it differently for their local candidates, that's fine. You're running for president, you get $2 million paid for by the taxpayer, you're done. You're running for House, you're going to get $150,000 paid for by the taxpayer, done. Senate, you get $200,000 paid for by the taxpayer, done.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I also agree we should limit the time that campaigns are run. I mean, part of the problem is they start running 2 years before, right? And these campaigns are huge, and they take a lot of money to do. If you had a very limited time to run, and there's some downside to that too, because maybe some candidates without name recognition might not get heard as much and might not get traction in a short period of time. But if you provide, more open debates, like you said, public funding, I think that would help some of that. But let me finish on sort of how bad the PAC thing is and kind of how this was all allowed. So, Citizens United ruled this. The Supreme Court said it was okay. So now these entities called super PACs have no limits regarding contributions or expenditures as long as, and this is what they call them, independent expenditures. So what does independent expenditures mean? That means that they cannot coordinate with a candidate or a political party in regards to their messages. However, it is legal for candidates and super PAC managers to discuss strategy and tactics through the media. So, do you believe in any way, shape, or form that there's not some level of coordination between super PACs and candidates, either through back channels or through the media, where you're saying, I'm
Yeah,
for this, and what do
I
you
think
know?
a super PAC can see what the candidate is
Of course,
advertising on their website or in
right.
their speeches and their
And the
campaigning, and
right.
then they'll create a commercial based on that exactly.
That's exactly what
Uh,
happens.
yeah, so in the case of super PAC, the money can't go directly to the campaign to
Right.
finance the campaign, but it can finance campaign expenditures like travel or parties or commercials and things like that. So that's and those were I mean those super PACs. That's where the big money comes in, right? Who doesn't love a big party? That's why candidates live. That's why you get people like Beto O'Rourke, Stacey
Beto.
Abrams running endlessly, 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 and not even winning anything because there's a lot of money to be had, a lot of parties.
Yep. Yeah. So to take it one final step. So super PACs, you might say, well, they need to disclose who they get funds from, right? They're required to disclose just like we are. If you give me money, you have to tell me what your name is, your address, your employer, I believe, also, and I need to disclose that information to the Federal Election Commission because that's how contributions are tracked and the limits are tracked. So super PACs need to do that also. So what's the problem? Well, the problem is, and this is where we talk, if you've heard the term dark money, which I think people generally have, that doesn't mean the money is dark. That means if I donate to a super PAC, I'm going to form another shell entity and I'm going to donate to the super PAC through there. And that shell entity doesn't need to disclose where it got its money from. So if I'm George Soros or Adelson or whatever, I'll just form an LLC, right? A shell entity called I Love America and put my money in there. And I Love America then could give it to a super PAC in an unlimited amount of money. And when the super PAC discloses to the FCC where they got their money from, it will say, I love America. Isn't that beautiful? And nobody knows where that money came from.
You know, we know where it's going.
So that's kind of how it all happened. And so I'd like to conclude, and I think I think this proves the case stronger than any, just kind of telling the story and how all this came about, that we need to do away with all
Fix
of
it.
this.
We have
Uh,
to fix it.
yeah,
How much of that money? How much PAC money came from Ukraine? How much money are we
we
sending
don't
to
know.
Ukraine?
We
We
have
don't know.
no idea. Now, I think it is illegal for foreign money to come in, but who's watching that, right? Um,
How, how would you know? You don't need. You don't have to track where the money came from.
so to kind of sum it up, Justice Stevens in his dissenting opinion that he wrote on Citizens United, kind of said it is a rejection of the common sense of the American people who have recognized a need to prevent corporations from undermining self government. And, until we kind of get this rolled back, we're going to, and nobody's talking about this, right? I mean, very few people, very few candidates,
No.
very few
I
politicians
don't think you'll
are,
ever see a case come back to the Supreme Court. If you do, it
oh,
won't be in the next 30 years.
it's crazy. So that's part of what we're doing here. We're trying to get this knowledge out there, support candidates, get people talking about it begin because our politicians aren't talking about it. There are movements out there. There's people working, and we kind of all have to get together to make this happen because it's not going to happen on its own. That's definitely not what's going to happen. Let's see. Anything else on that topic, Bob? I think we
I
did
don't
a
think
good
so.
job, walking through, if I don't mind say so myself, walking through. Although that part about Superman was a little weird.
Yeah, I apologize to any Lutherans I may have offended.
Yeah, your knowledge of Superman was, equal to your knowledge of PAX. I'd
Don't
have
get
to
me
say.
started on Beavis and Butthead.
Neither of us have used our catchphrase tonight, so we must not be saying anything controversial.
I
We're
think
agreeing too
so.
much. We're agreeing too much. Maybe we'll get into it now. So
That
I,
cognac's making you more French, is what's happening.
I might just finish this bottle tonight. I might just finish it. Anyways, I did want to touch on, and this might be a little bit more controversial. This week, they've been handing down sentences on the January 6th. What should we call it? Riot, insurrection? What term do you like?
But
What do you
just
consider
January 6th, capital event.
capital event? That's very non-committal there.
Yeah,
I'd call it an insurrection, but whatever.
that's political theater to me at this point. I really think so.
That's where we differ. Anyways, so there's some hefty sentences being handed down, mostly to I guess 5 Proud Boys, which is I guess a I don't know. Would you call it a militia group? I
I
don't know
would
where they
not,
technically
but
call.
I don't know a lot about the Proud Boys. I Do they parade around with guns? I guess they maybe have them. I doubt they have a cache of them, at least a collective cache. I don't know if I'd call them a militia group. I'd call them a.
I know they've provided security and stuff at certain events, and I think that was part of what they were serving during January 6th. Um, but the leader, I guess, was just sentenced this week to 22 years in prison. And Bob, as I told you, he wasn't even there. He wasn't there on January 6th.
And yeah,
He was in
honestly,
a
I don't know
different
much
state.
about this guy or what he did or didn't do.
Right.
We talked a little bit earlier today. The guy wasn't there. So based on what I know, which is the guy wasn't there, he got 22 years in prison. I find that to be absolutely ridiculous. Uh, he did a lot less than a lot of the rioters did around the George Floyd time or when Trump was elected and there were riots in D.C. Those people, did any of them get 22 years?
Well, did they try to stop the peaceful transfer of power?
Nobody marched into the Capitol
So
with
that's
so
what they're
much
being
as a
charged with.
baseball bat.
Seditious conspiracy.
Nobody charged in there with so much as a baseball bat. And that's what bothers me about the term insurrection. What insurrection have you ever seen or overthrown of government, attempt to overthrow a government have you ever seen without a baseball bat or other weapons, knives, guns?
So I'm pretty.
That's where I have the problem. It was people. Doors were opened freely by cops. There's rumors that the fence, there was a hole cut in it by a cop. All those sorts of things going down. There's video of people pouring into the Capitol with the doors that were open. People being escorted by security around the Capitol. I can't. Nobody was trying to overthrow the government. It was a protest. Protest that got out of hand.
So you don't think
That's
the intent was to stop the steal, even though that's what everyone
absolutely
was
not.
saying? Oh, that.
Absolutely not. I don't
So
think so.
what were they doing there? They were protesting.
They were protesting. When the doors open and you have a
Okay.
crowd that big, some people do stupid things and go in, but nobody was in there breaking stuff, destroying stuff, going after Congress people,
Well,
stealing things.
well,
I don't know. Maybe something was stolen,
well.
right? I don't know. But
I would suggest that a jury of their peers decided that that was not their intent to form a peaceful protest, and I'm guessing evidence was presented that there was an intent to stop the proceedings. Because I'm guessing seditious. I don't know what seditious conspiracy is, uh, but I'm guessing it has to do with uh, our power structure and the peaceful transfer of power in this country, and trying to prevent that.
you had an FBI agent,
They weren't charged with.
contractor, standing outside with a loudspeaker or a bullhorn. Go in. Let's go in. Go into the Capitol. Go into the Capitol. All that stuff is really suspicious to me. And
So
that
you're.
individual hasn't
What you
been
talking
charged.
about, Bob? I knew I was
I
going to have
can't,
to
you
throw.
know,
You're
yeah, I
throwing
can't
out
remember his
conspiracy
name.
theories.
I keep wanting to say Ray Epps. I don't think that's his name. Ray Epps is somebody else. He had to do with Dominion, but um, I wish I could remember his name right now.
And by
That
the way,
said,
the judge that sentenced these guys, appointed by Trump, and
actually,
uh,
maybe it was Ray Epps.
and the
I'm not
leader
sure.
Enrique Tarrio, who got the I guess both the I think there was also a former leader of the Oath Keepers who got 18 years again for seditious conspiracy. So there's some hefty sentences. I think Enrique said that day was a national embarrassment. His argument was, uh, I guess at trial, from what I read, was that he argued that he was being blamed for the riot while it was Trump that inflamed the mob. That he was just a misguided patriot on that day.
So look up Ray Epps. Not now, obviously, but do some
Who?
reading on Ray Epps. Ray Epps. EPPS. Ray Epps.
Who is he?
He was a guy standing outside the Capitol. Go in with the bullhorn. Go in. He's got ties to the FBI, and he's never been charged with anything. And he's on
Iron-
video. You can find him on video.
Ironically, these guys are being charged with seditious conspiracy, and you're saying it's all a conspiracy. Ray, how do you spell his name?
EPPS. Epps.
Okay. And you think he was a CIA operative or something?
There's been news organizations and conversations, I think, on Rogan for one of them. Tucker, back when Tucker was still on Fox. There's plenty of information out there. There's videos of that guy, Ray Epps, standing out there with a bullhorn. Go in, let's go in. Go to the Capitol. He's
For
never
what?
been charged. You
And
know
what?
his name?
And what's the theory that the CIA wanted
Uh,
people to breach the
I don't know
Capitol
about
so
the CIA,
we could lock
but
down?
whatever agencies are out there knew this was happening, knew this was coming, even encouraged it.
Encourage it for what purpose?
But encouraged it or not, they could have stopped it.
For what purpose?
There's plenty of videos. Well, I'm not going to answer that question.
Okay. I, I mean, the CIA and, I guess, what do they call them? The three-letter agencies?
Yeah.
I just read a whole book about you're familiar with the Church Committee in the 70s when they kind of disclosed all the covert ops and whatever. I mean, all the assassination plots of foreign leaders and whatever. I just read a whole book about Frank Church. I know they are capable of things, although you kind of need evidence and proof. But
There's a lot
you
of
kind of always thought,
circumstantial evidence out there that the powers that be that didn't want Trump in office anymore. You had a lot of FBI agents sign off that Hunter's laptop wasn't real and it was Russian disinformation
well,
when they all knew it wasn't.
then you think they would want the electors to be counted. I'm just saying
There's a
you don't
lot of
have a
people who
motive.
knew where COVID came from.
You don't have a
And,
motive.
and
So,
well, the
anyways,
motive potentially would be that they wanted to
make Trump look bad
exactly.
and charge him with all the things that they're charging him with now. Which, again, just to be clear, I don't think any of the charges, or at least most of the charges, have anything to do with his speech on January 6th. Largely, they do not. Largely, that all this conspiracy and what he's being charged in Georgia, and you didn't see any of the hearing today. It's actually very interesting. You'll learn about the legal system. So, just briefly, the hearing today was Sidney Powell and Kenneth Chesborough, who was Trump's, both were generally Trump's attorney. They're trying to get their case separated from the rest under the RICO statute that Georgia filed with him. The judge is clearly rejecting that. His more concern is how are we possibly going to start a trial in October. But anyways, all those conspiracy charges are largely around pressuring public officials, making false statements with filings, both legal filings and governmental filing documents, and this whole scheme of creating these fake electors that Mike Pence was going to count. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but I read the whole January 6th report. There's a lot there that's beyond him, using his free speech.
Did anybody else in history try to use other electors?
I believe so.
All right. So what's the difference?
What's the difference between
What Trump did trying to use other
So you're
electors?
saying he might have done something wrong, but you're saying he's being treated differently than other people are being treated. That has been
Exactly.
done wrong. This is your argument with the documents also.
I think so, yeah. Absolutely. We know
I would
Obama
say
had documents, Biden
I,
had documents,
I
George
would
Bush had documents,
I
Hillary
would
had documents.
I would say there's a vast difference in degree with all of it. So again, getting back to and maybe wrapping it up here because this all kind of goes back to the conversation that Maher and Rogan had. Rogan's like Biden lies too. Trump lies, Biden lies. I think we're smart enough to realize there's a difference in degree. And we should go into the details and we should, as citizens of the United States, be informed of those details and not just take a surface approach and say, well, he had them and they had them. It's the same thing.
I
It is
think
not
the difference is
it is not the same thing.
did Trump believe that he
Not.
won? I think Trump believed he won.
Oh,
And even if, as Bill Maher said during that interview, even if he had people telling him that he
they've
lost,
testified. They've testified to
if he had
Congress
people
under
telling
oath.
him he lost, doesn't
He
mean
did.
that he
He
believes
did
it.
have people. He had all his people. He had his
How
attorney
many people have
general.
had doctors tell
He had
them
all the
that
people he
if
had appointed. He
how many
knew
people have
he
had
lost.
doctors tell them if you don't stop smoking, you're going to die?
And
Maybe they believe that doctor, maybe they didn't. Or maybe you've got cancer, and there's probably people out there who didn't believe that either. You still have to believe it. Because your doctor's telling you something doesn't mean you believe it. And in Trump's case, he had a record number of votes. He had the whole
well, not
FBI against him
record
on
number of votes for a
that
loser.
Hunter laptop. He had a record number of votes, I think, for a sitting president.
Still lost.
Right. He had the whole last minute change in laws of states because of COVID.
Had plenty of
And
time
all
to.
about lots of things have changed. he believe. I don't know if he believed it, but I think it's a fair argument for him to make that he believed that.
I
It
don't think
doesn't
that's.
matter if he
I
was
don't even
told
think it's
that he
relevant.
lost.
I don't think it's relevant to a lot of these cases. I mean, to these charges, whether he believed it or not. I don't think that's going to be a point of law or point of contention in a lot of this because he
And
did
that's why
other
this is so
things.
interesting to me because we'll see. I mean, he's going to have a 24-hour reality show on all of network TV for months and months and months leading up to this election.
Oh, we're going to have a constitutional crisis.
It's going to be amazing. What happens if he wins?
It's not going to be amazing. It's going to be
I mean,
sad
it's
for this
it's
country.
it's very possible that Trump wins the next election. 'Cause Biden's numbers are falling, not only within his party, or not only within independents and Republicans, but within his party, his numbers are falling. He's losing support of a lot of the minorities at this point. I don't think anybody can look at him and listen to him talk for 5 minutes and think the guy's got or is with it. Trump could
I,
win.
and we both agree that neither of them should be running, right?
I'd prefer not. I'd
Okay.
prefer completely different candidates.
I think it's
That
better for
said,
the country in general if neither of them ran.
I'd vote for a rock before I voted for Joe. And
A
most
rock.
likely, like I always do, I'll vote for the Libertarian candidate.
You're throwing away your vote, Bob.
No,
I agree. I don't think you could throw away your vote. You vote for who you want to vote for, right? It's the
that's
two
right.
parties, as we've argued before. It's the two parties that have you thinking that you're throwing away your vote. Oh, I got
That
an
said,
I
I mean,
got
I could be swayed from the Libertarian candidate depending on who's going to be running for. If there's a third party running, no labels.
yeah. Yeah, we're not going to talk about no labels tonight because I don't want to make this an an extraordinarily long podcast. But I did get an email from Democratic Alert about Joe Manchin, and here's what it says. The title on the subject matter line is livid. It's very dramatic. It says Joe Manchin is refusing to back down from his disgusting. It says disgusting, and disgusting is bolded idea to run for president against Joe Biden as a third party candidate. Is he delusional? If now this is highlighted, it says if Manchin runs, he will throw the 2024 election to Donald Trump. We only have one chance to stop this. We have to show Joe Manchin a surge of Democratic support in our Joe Biden Rapid Response Fund. If Joe
Give us your
Manchin
money.
sees, yeah, if Joe Manchin sees another 10,000 donations today, today is all caps, by the way, he'll know he doesn't have a shot of winning anything. And then, of course, there are places where I can click to donate. God. So that's where we're at. Great. I think I'm
That's where
gonna.
we're at.
I think I'm gonna drink some more.
Again, the only way to fix this, we got to start
Oh boy.
putting attention on candidates who want term limits, who want
I'm.
campaign
I'm.
finance reform,
I'm about to give up.
ranked choice voting. Got to turn
Although,
off the news. I have to tell you, not having any network news or cable news for the last year has been fantastic for my state of mind.
that's the
I'm
problem.
still
I'm retired.
informed, but it's yeah.
That's the problem. I'm retired now, so I flip through the channels in the morning, and it's not a good thing. It's like like you said, it's interesting and somewhat entertaining if it wasn't our country at risk here,
Yeah.
which then it becomes disturbing and frustrating. But that's what alcohol's for, Bob. To take off the rough edges.
I'm sure our country was founded on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Barroom conversations.
All right. Well, we better wrap this up. Got anything else to say?
Go Packers.
Go. You had to sneak that in. Go, Aaron. I'm a Jets fan.
New Jets fan. You're a Bears fan.
Absolutely. Go Bears. Later.
Bye.